Summerpalooza 6 Quake of the Creek Marathon will happen in July and August of this year. But in the meantime, like I promised in my 2025 plans video, I'm gonna be reviewing one episode from this show per month, aside from July and August, obviously. And I'm gonna be reviewing JPony since I have been considering on reviewing this episode for Valentine's Half Month 6. And since I'm unable to do that last year due to me rescheduling, this is the best opportunity for this episode to finally get reviewed. And let's be real, I am gonna be reviewing the season 4 episodes involving Craig and Wildernessa. It's not much of a surprise considering that that's one of the best episodes involving the two characters. The premise of JPony is that Manny really wants JP to be part of the horse scores since she has a crush on him, but at the same time Mackenzie thinks otherwise, with her being the leader and with JP doing things that horses don't do, especially do the JP dance. Honestly, it's difficult to take her character seriously because she isn't too mean-spirited to be considered as a terrible character. Since I used these 4 characters, the horse scores, in chapter 16 of Steven Universe of the Creek, my point of view on Mackenzie is the fact that with this show not being too mean-spirited, it really makes her tolerable, considering with her trying to act like a horse while her friends are trying to be like horses. But Manny being attracted to JP really sums up a lot that she took the rules seriously, judging of how the lifestyle of being a horse scorer just isn't really in JP's blood in the point of view of Mackenzie. But that's not the main focus of this episode. Like I said, Manny is attracted to JP and she really wants him to be a horse so that she can hang out with him. But considering that JP is only doing this for fun, it kind of sums up that if this episode didn't have a continuation of JP and Manny's chemistry, then I'm pretty sure that this episode would have meant nothing, and this would have been a filler episode involving the horse scores. And since that the horse scores do return, and it does continue the chemistry of JP and Manny, then I have to admit that this episode really aged a little bit more better than how I saw it when I watched the episode for the first time. I don't remember if I watched this episode in the very end of 2020 or the very beginning of 2021, but if there's one thing I have to address is the fact that it was difficult for me to get into the show when I was getting into cartoons more frequently earlier this decade. Granted, this episode didn't bore me, but at the same time, when I was binge watching cartoons for the first time, it's difficult to remember. Like, I tried to pay attention to this episode when it comes to other episodes that I binge watched from this show. But you have to admit that when you binge watch a show and you don't record yourself when it comes to a reaction, because obviously you can't record your reactions from these episodes on YouTube because of copyright, then your point of view of this show would change upon revisiting these episodes, even if you are only watching one of the episodes and not the entire show, like I did with Steven Universe during the making of Steven Universe Marathon for Summerpalooza 5. So, what I see involving the chemistry of JP and Manny, honestly, it is a shame that we don't get some kind of conclusion involving these two since the series is officially over, but at the very least, we can keep in mind that they're at least together in some other capacity when it comes to them getting closer to each other. Granted, they're kids in this show, but when they get older, there's a chance that they might be together since that they know each other more after this episode. If it wasn't for the JP dance in the middle of this episode, Honestly, there was no other way for JP to dance with Manny in the Tea Timers Club tree, or whatever you call it, because that would probably be less directionless when it comes to JP's idea of dancing with Manny if it wasn't for this episode's existence. Because if this episode didn't happen, then I'm pretty sure that this is mainly a plot device for JP to handle, and it would have made Manny a plot device. Which is honestly a good thing that this episode did exist. Getting into the final minutes of this episode, Mackenzie sabotaged the final object that JP needs to jump over in order to become a horse. And considering that the strictness in her isn't as severe, it really makes me convinced that if they took this way more seriously, then I'm pretty sure that JP would have been injured or have a concussion. So, I'm starting to understand the limitations of what they're trying to do in this show than how I see it back then. If you ask me, if they really made Mackenzie really mean-spirited, then I'm pretty sure that she won't be qualified as a leader, because even though that she may be strict when it comes to the wars, if she was mean-spirited, then she would have been kicked out, and Manny will probably be the leader of the Horse Girls, which, to tell you the truth, they're really trying to make the mean-spirited's nature towards Xavier in comparison to the other characters that we've seen from the show. And if there were more mean-spirited characters other than Xavier, then I'm pretty sure that the toxicity in this side of the creek would have been a little bit more active than what we ended up seeing in the other side of the creek in season 2. So, with Mackenzie admitting that she sabotaged the course towards the end, which leads to a reaction that is a little too over the top but somewhat humorous, judging of the fact that this show doesn't need to be that serious in this type of scenario. I really feel like the way the episode ends really sums up a lot that JP isn't really horse material, since that he is vehicle material. Seeing JP as a truck really is humorous, judging the fact that that really is a humorous design, even though it does resemble its Thomas the Tank Engine faces or Cars faces, even though this doesn't feel too similar to the designs of Pixar cars. But let's be perfectly real, the inspiration that they took by making this design really sums up a lot that they pretty much knew what they were doing by making this episode. I doubt I'm gonna be talking about another episode centering around JP and Manny, since the plot in the Tea Timers episode from season 2 isn't centered around them. There's a chance I might talk about the Horse Girls again from season 4 for Summerpalooza 6 Quake of the Creek Marathon, when I schedule out the episodes that I'm gonna be including for that marathon. Keep in mind, it is still a process to work out the schedule, but once that happens, there's a chance I might talk about the season 4 episode centering around the Horse Girls, since it kind of catched my interest upon rewatching it a few times. As for this episode, it's a decent episode involving JP, and when it comes to relationships in this show, aside from Xavier and Maya's toxic relationship, this show knows how to handle healthy relationships a lot more better than any other cartoon that I've seen. Granted, they're all contenders on handling healthier relationships, but still, this show really knows how to handle relationships properly. I'm giving this episode a 7.5 out of 10.